Hey there! Tonight, we're stepping away from the familiar world of solved puzzles and answered questions into the shadowed realm where mystery reigns supreme. These aren't ghost stories or urban legends. These are real, documented enigmas that have left the brightest minds scratching their heads for decades, sometimes centuries. Ancient structures that shouldn't exist, civilizations that vanished without explanation, and artifacts that challenge everything we thought we knew about our past. From massive stone monuments that seem to mock our modern engineering to entire peoples who simply disappeared from history's pages, these mysteries remind us that despite all our technology and knowledge, the past still guards its deepest secrets with stubborn silence. So settle in, maybe turn down the lights, and let's venture together into the unknown corners of human history, where every answer only leads to more questions. If this kind of deep mystery helps you unwind from the day, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it genuinely brings you that sense of wonder. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what unsolved mystery fascinates you most. There's something oddly comforting about knowing others out there are pondering the same ancient riddles. So dim whatever lights you need to, get comfortable, and let's begin with mysteries that time itself seems determined to keep hidden. Deep beneath the rolling hills of China's Shanxi province lies what might be the greatest archaeological treasure never fully opened. For over 2,000 years, the tomb of China's first emperor has remained sealed, protected not just by an army of terracotta warriors, but by legends of deadly traps, rivers of mercury, and secrets that might be too dangerous for the modern world to handle. The tomb complex stretches across an area so vast it dwarfs most ancient cities. When construction began, the emperor was just 13 years old, and the project consumed the labor of hundreds of thousands of workers for decades. What makes this mystery particularly haunting is that we know it's there. We know roughly what's inside, thanks to ancient records, yet nobody dares to open it. According to historical accounts, the burial chamber contains a miniature representation of the emperor's entire kingdom. Rivers of liquid mercury flow eternally through channels carved in stone, representing the great waterways of ancient China. The ceiling was inlaid with pearls to recreate the night sky, while precious treasures and even court officials were buried to serve in the afterlife. Most unsettling of all are the reported automatic crossbow traps, still armed and waiting after more than 2 millennia. Modern surveys have confirmed something extraordinary beneath that earthen mound. Soil samples reveal mercury concentrations so high they match the ancient descriptions perfectly. Ground-penetrating radar shows a massive structure waiting in the darkness. Yet archaeological teams refuse to proceed with excavation. And it's not just because of technical challenges. The discovery of the terracotta army taught researchers a harsh lesson about the fragility of ancient artifacts. When those clay warriors were first unearthed, their vibrant colors vanished within minutes of exposure to air. If the tomb contains silk, paper, or organic materials that have survived in the sealed environment, opening it prematurely could destroy irreplaceable treasures forever. But there are other concerns, deeper ones that touch on cultural and spiritual boundaries. In Chinese tradition, disturbing imperial tombs is seen as profoundly disrespectful to ancestral spirits. The government remains extremely cautious about releasing detailed survey information, and many believe there may be discoveries within that tomb which could fundamentally challenge our understanding of ancient Chinese civilization. Some theories suggest the tomb might contain advanced technologies or knowledge systems far beyond what we'd expect from that era. Others whisper about astronomical instruments, mathematical texts, or engineering principles that could rewrite history books. Until preservation technology advances enough to guarantee the safety of whatever lies within, this mystery will remain locked away, waiting in the darkness beneath that silent mound. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away across the vast steppes of Mongolia, another burial mystery has confounded treasure hunters and archaeologists for over 8 centuries. The tomb of Genghis Khan, the man who forged the largest contiguous empire in human history, has never been found despite countless expeditions and modern technology. The Great Khan died during a military campaign, and according to legend, his body was brought back to Mongolia under the strictest secrecy. The escort reportedly killed every person they encountered along the journey to prevent anyone from learning the route. Some stories claim that 1,000 horses were driven across the burial ground to erase all traces, while others speak of rivers being diverted to flood the site or entire forests planted to conceal it. What makes this mystery particularly intriguing is the complete absence of any reliable clues. Unlike other famous tombs that left at least some historical traces, Genghis Khan's resting place vanished so thoroughly that even his own descendants lost track of its location. The Secret History of the Mongols, the oldest surviving chronicle of Mongol history, mentions only the year of his death while remaining silent about the burial. Modern attempts to locate the tomb have been repeatedly blocked by local residents who consider the land sacred. Satellite imagery projects involving thousands of volunteers have analysed vast areas of Mongolia, yet turned up nothing conclusive. The Khenti region, where the tomb is believed to lie, remains largely inaccessible wilderness, and traditional Mongol culture demands that their greatest leaders' wishes for secrecy be respected. If ever discovered, the tomb could contain treasures gathered from across an empire that stretched from China to Persia. But perhaps more importantly, it might hold documents, maps, or artifacts that could illuminate one of history's most transformative periods. The mystery endures not just because of the physical challenges of searching Mongolia's remote landscapes, but because of the deliberate and extraordinarily successful effort to erase all traces of where the great conqueror was laid to rest. Moving from the steppes to the dense jungles of southern Mexico, we encounter another vanished figure whose identity remains one of archaeology's most compelling puzzles. Deep within the ancient Maya city of Palenque, archaeologists discovered a tomb that would challenge everything they thought they knew about Maya burial practices. The tomb was found in 1994, hidden within a modest temple, overshadowed by grander structures nearby. When researchers finally descended into the burial chamber, they found something unprecedented: the skeletal remains of a woman covered in brilliant red cinnabar dust, earning her the nickname the Red Queen. The burial was clearly that of someone tremendously important. Jade ornaments, pearl necklaces, and an elaborate funerary mask made of malachite surrounded the remains. Yet nowhere in the tomb was there any inscription identifying who this woman had been. No carved names, no hieroglyphic texts, nothing to explain why someone of such obvious importance was buried without the usual Maya custom of recording their identity for posterity. The mystery deepens when you consider the extraordinary use of cinnabar, the mercury-based mineral that gave the tomb its distinctive red coloration. Analysis revealed that mercury from the pigment had actually permeated the bones, suggesting either a lifetime of exposure to the substance or its abundant use in death rituals. Among the Maya, red was the sacred color of life, death, and rebirth, associated with the east and the rising sun. Several theories have emerged about the Red Queen's identity. Some scholars believe she was a powerful ruler in her own right, possibly connected to the great Maya king Pakal, whose tomb lies nearby. Others suggest she might have been a high priestess, whose knowledge of sacred cycles elevated her beyond ordinary nobility. The age of the remains and the timing of the burial seem to match known historical figures, yet without definitive inscriptions, certainty remains elusive. What makes this mystery particularly haunting is the sense that the Red Queen's anonymity might have been intentional. Was her identity deliberately concealed because of political upheaval, religious conflict, or some forgotten scandal? Did she represent traditions or knowledge that later rulers wanted erased from memory? Standing in that burial chamber today, surrounded by the jade and pearls that once adorned an unknown queen, You can almost feel the weight of secrets deliberately buried with her. The jungle presses close around Palank's ancient stones, whispering in languages no longer spoken, guarding mysteries that may never yield their answers. These three burial mysteries, separated by continents and centuries, share a common thread. They represent deliberate attempts to hide, protect, or erase knowledge from the historical record. Whether through elaborate security measures, cultural taboos, or intentional anonymity, each reminds us that some of history's most important figures took their secrets to graves we may never find or dare to open. But burial mysteries are just one category of the unexplained. Hidden beneath the earth in other corners of the world are architectural achievements that challenge our understanding of what ancient peoples could accomplish with primitive tools and techniques. In the remote countryside of eastern China, local farmers draining what they thought were natural ponds made a discovery that would puzzle engineers and archaeologists for decades. Beneath the water lay a vast network of hand-carved caves, their walls perfectly smooth and decorated with intricate patterns that seemed almost machine-made in their precision. The Longyu Caves, as they came to be known, represent one of the most sophisticated underground construction projects ever discovered. Each cavern rises over 30 meters high, with walls carved to flawless finishes and ceilings supported by precisely placed stone pillars. Every surface bears the same distinctive parallel wave-like carvings, running in unbroken lines from ceiling to floor with mathematical regularity. What makes these caves truly mysterious is not just their scale and precision, but their complete absence from any historical record. Despite potentially requiring the labor of hundreds of thousands of workers over many years, no ancient Chinese chronicle mentions their construction. No artifacts have been found within the chambers to hint at their purpose or the people who built them. The caves appear to date back over 2,000 years, yet display engineering capabilities that seem to exceed the known standards of ancient Chinese civilization. The uniformity of the carved patterns across all chambers suggests the project was executed under unified direction, using techniques that remain unexplained. Modern attempts to recreate even small sections of the carving work have proven extremely difficult, raising questions about what tools and methods the original builders possessed. The caves remain empty, silent, and seemingly abandoned from the moment they were completed. No soot stains from torches mark the walls. No evidence of habitation or storage exists within these perfectly carved chambers. They appear to have been created for a purpose that vanished along with their builders, leaving only the immaculate stonework as testimony to their ambition. Theories about the Longyu Caves range from practical to fantastical. Some suggest they were massive underground granaries designed to store food supplies for a population we've lost track of in history. Others propose they served as shelters during wartime, though their decorative nature seems inconsistent with purely defensive purposes. The most intriguing possibility is that they were ceremonial or religious spaces, created for rituals so sacred or secret that they were never documented in writing. The mathematical precision of the wave patterns has led some researchers to wonder if the caves encode astronomical information, serving as a kind of three-dimensional calendar or star map. The consistent spacing and angles of the carvings suggest they weren't merely decorative, but might have held specific meaning for their creators. Yet perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Longyu mystery is how thoroughly the knowledge of their construction disappeared. In a civilization renowned for keeping detailed records, how could such a monumental undertaking leave no trace in the historical record? Were the caves built by a culture that predated written Chinese history? Or were they created by people whose very existence was deliberately erased from memory? Today, only a few of the caves are open to visitors, their carved walls glowing under artificial lights that reveal every precise chisel mark. Standing in those vast chambers, you can almost hear the echoes of ancient voices and the rhythm of countless tools shaping stone. But the builders themselves remain as mysterious as the day their work was rediscovered beneath the still water of those deceptive ponds. while the Longyu caves represent mysterious construction techniques. Another architectural enigma challenges our understanding of ancient lifting and transportation capabilities. In Lebanon's Bekaa Valley, among the ruins of the ancient city of Baalbek, lie stone blocks so massive they seem to mock the very concept of human construction. The three stones known as the trilithon each weigh between 700 and 800 tons, roughly equivalent to the weight of a fully loaded Boeing airliner. Yet these colossal blocks were somehow quarried, transported, and precisely positioned to form part of the foundation for a Roman temple built in the 1st century AD. The engineering challenge they represent goes far beyond anything the Romans are known to have achieved elsewhere. What makes the Baalbek mystery even more perplexing is the discovery of even larger stones still lying in the ancient quarry nearby. One block weighs nearly 1,000 tons, another exceeds 1,200 tons, and the largest discovered weighs a staggering 1,650 tons, making it the heaviest worked stone block ever found. These megalithic monuments to human ambition remain where ancient workers left them, as if the project was suddenly abandoned. The Roman cranes and lifting devices documented by historians could handle at most 60 to 100 tons, making the trilithon blocks 5 to 10 times heavier than anything Roman technology should have been able to manage. No surviving records describe the techniques used to move these stones. No Roman engineering texts explain the methods. And no other Roman construction project attempted anything on this scale. This has led some researchers to propose that the massive stone foundation actually predates the Roman temple built on top of it. Perhaps it belongs to a much older civilization with capabilities that surpass our current understanding of ancient engineering. The similarities between Baalbek's megalithic construction and other mysterious stone structures around the world suggest the possibility of shared knowledge or techniques that have been lost to history. The quarry stones are particularly puzzling because they represent such enormous investments of labor and skill, yet they were never moved to their intended destination. What circumstances could have caused ancient builders to abandon such massive undertakings? Was it a change in political power? A natural disaster, or perhaps the loss of whatever specialized knowledge made such construction possible? Standing among these silent giants, watching the shadows move across stones that dwarf human scale, you can't help but feel humbled by the ambitions of our ancestors. The blocks seem to whisper questions about capabilities we've forgotten and techniques we've never rediscovered. From the realm of massive construction projects, we turn to mysteries of a more intimate scale, yet no less puzzling. Hidden in the archives of Sweden's National Library lies a book so strange and controversial that it's been called the Devil's Bible, not just for its enormous size, but for the dark legends that have surrounded it for nearly 8 centuries. The Codex Gigas weighs almost 75 kilograms and stands nearly a meter tall, making it the largest surviving medieval manuscript. But its size is not what makes it legendary. What truly sets this book apart is the enormous full-page illustration of Satan himself, painted with glowing eyes, a red tongue, and razor-sharp claws, positioned prominently within what is otherwise a religious text. According to medieval legend, the manuscript was created by a Benedictine monk who had been sentenced to be walled up alive for breaking his monastic vows. In desperation, he promised that if given one night, he could produce a book containing all human knowledge. Knowing the task was impossible, the monk allegedly made a pact with the devil, who helped him complete the work in exchange for his soul. While this story is clearly mythological, the Codex Gigas presents real puzzles that have yet to be satisfactorily explained. Analysis of the handwriting reveals that the entire 620-page manuscript appears to have been written by a single person, maintaining perfect consistency in style and lettering across what would have required decades of work. The level of uniformity suggests either superhuman dedication or techniques for maintaining consistency that we don't understand. The book contains not only the complete Latin Bible, but also texts on history, medicine, magic, and astronomy, along with what appears to be a catalogue of demons and spells. The juxtaposition of sacred Christian texts with occult material creates an unsettling contradiction that medieval readers would have found deeply disturbing. Over the centuries, the Devil's Bible has been associated with disasters wherever it appeared. Plagues, wars, and the collapse of dynasties have all been blamed on its presence, though such claims likely say more about human psychology than supernatural powers. Yet the book's dark reputation has persisted, and many still regard it as cursed or dangerous to handle. What makes the Codex Gigas particularly intriguing is how it challenges our assumptions about medieval knowledge and belief systems. The inclusion of advanced astronomical calculations alongside magical incantations suggests a worldview where science and superstition were not clearly separated. The medical texts contain surprisingly accurate anatomical information, while the historical sections preserve accounts that have been lost elsewhere. The mystery of who actually created this massive work and why they chose to include such controversial material remains unsolved. Was it the product of a single obsessed scholar working in isolation, or might it represent the collected knowledge of a secret society or hidden tradition? The perfect preservation of the manuscript through centuries of upheaval suggests it was valued and protected by someone, but by whom and why? Today, the Codex Gigas continues to draw researchers, theologians, and mystery enthusiasts from around the world. Its pages, still vivid after 8 centuries, seem to pulse with questions that go to the heart of medieval learning and belief. Standing before this monumental book, you can almost feel the weight of the knowledge it contains and the mysteries it continues to guard. These architectural and literary mysteries remind us that human ambition and creativity have always pushed beyond the boundaries of what seemed possible. Whether carving perfect chambers from solid rock, moving stones that dwarf modern capabilities, or creating books that challenge the very limits of individual achievement, our ancestors accomplished things that continue to puzzle us today. But some mysteries go beyond human achievement to touch on the very foundations of civilization itself. Hidden beneath the harsh landscape of southeastern Turkey lies evidence of a discovery that has forced archaeologists to completely reconsider their understanding of early human society and the origins of organized religion. Göbekli Tepe emerged from the Turkish hillside like a message from a forgotten world. Its massive stone pillars arranged in perfect circles that predate Stonehenge by thousands of years. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt first broke ground at this site in the 1990s, he had no idea he was about to shatter every assumption about the capabilities of prehistoric hunter-gatherer societies. The temple complex consists of enormous T-shaped limestone pillars, some reaching 6 meters in height and weighing dozens of tons. Each pillar is intricately carved with depictions of animals that seem to dance across the stone surfaces. Lions, wild boar, foxes, snakes, and birds emerge from the rock in elaborate reliefs, accompanied by abstract symbols whose meanings remain completely unknown. What makes Göbekli Tepe revolutionary is its age. At over 11,000 years old, it was built before agriculture, before the wheel, before metalworking, before any of the technological advances we associate with complex construction projects. The people who created this monument were supposedly nomadic hunters living in small scattered groups. Yet somehow they organized massive labor forces, developed sophisticated carving techniques, and executed an architectural vision that rivals anything built in the ancient world. The mystery deepens when you consider that around 8000 BC, the entire complex was deliberately buried. Someone made the conscious decision to cover these magnificent temples with tons of earth, sealing them away for millennia. This wasn't gradual abandonment or natural disaster. It was intentional concealment, as if the builders wanted to hide their creation from future generations. Why would a people invest such enormous effort in constructing these elaborate temples only to bury them? What knowledge or practices were they trying to protect or destroy? The deliberate burial is what preserved Göbekli Tepe so perfectly, but it also suggests that something significant happened to change the builders' relationship with their creation. The site has forced archaeologists to reconsider the relationship between religion and civilization. Traditional theories suggested that agriculture led to permanent settlements, which eventually developed organized religion. But Göbekli Tepe implies the opposite sequence. Perhaps it was the need to gather regularly for religious ceremonies that motivated hunter-gatherers to develop agriculture and permanent communities. The animal carvings themselves tell a story we can barely understand. They seem to represent a complex mythology or belief system, possibly related to shamanic practices or astronomical observations. Some researchers have noted that certain pillars appear to be aligned with specific constellations, suggesting the builders possess sophisticated knowledge of celestial movements. Most intriguingly, the quality of craftsmanship actually decreases in the newer sections of the site. The earliest structures show the most advanced techniques and artistic skill, while later additions appear cruder and less sophisticated. This reverses our usual assumption about technological progress and suggests that Göbekli Tepe represents the end of a golden age, rather than the beginning of civilization. Today, only a fraction of the site has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar reveals at least 20 additional stone circles buried beneath the hillside, each potentially containing new revelations about this lost chapter of human history. Every season of excavation brings new questions about who these people were and what drove them to create something so magnificent and then hide it away. The Turkish landscape around Göbekli Tepe stretches endlessly under brilliant skies, giving no hint of the revolutionary discoveries buried beneath its soil. Standing among those ancient pillars, you can almost feel the presence of the thousands of people who gathered here over centuries, participating in rituals and ceremonies we can only imagine. Their voices have been silent for millennia, but their stone monuments continue to whisper questions that challenge everything we thought we knew about our earliest ancestors. While Göbekli Tepe forces us to reconsider the religious capabilities of prehistoric peoples, another mystery challenges our understanding of ancient record-keeping and communication. In the remote highlands of western China, near the shores of a salt lake surrounded by desolate mountains, lies evidence of what might be an ancient technological achievement or simply an unusual geological formation. The Baigong pipes protrude from caves in Mount Baigong, like the remnants of some forgotten infrastructure project. These rust-colored formations appear to be metallic tubes, some embedded deep within the rock face, others scattered across the nearby lake bed. Local legends speak of the mountain as the dwelling place of mysterious beings. But when Chinese scientists first investigated these structures in the early 2000s, they approached the mystery with scientific caution. Initial analysis revealed that many of the pipes contained iron oxide, silicon dioxide, and calcium oxide. Some appeared highly corroded, suggesting great age, while others contained organic plant material that had somehow fossilized within the formations themselves. The regularity of some pipes, their consistent diameters, and the way they seem to connect the caves to the lake have fueled speculation about their origins and purpose. Mainstream geological explanations suggest these might be fossilized tree roots, ancient vegetation that was slowly replaced by minerals seeping through groundwater over millennia. This process, known as diagenesis, can create hollow tube-like structures that become encased in stone. While this explanation accounts for many of the observed features, it struggles to explain the apparent organization and the metallic composition of some formations. The pipe's location adds to their mystery. Mount Baigong rises from one of the most remote and inhospitable regions of China, far from any known ancient settlements or trade routes. If these are natural formations, their concentration in this particular area seems remarkably coincidental. If they're artificial constructions, the question of who built them and why becomes even more perplexing. Some researchers have proposed that the pipes represent remnants of an ancient civilization with sophisticated engineering capabilities. Others suggest they might be connected to prehistoric mining operations or water management systems. The most speculative theories link them to extraterrestrial visitation, though no concrete evidence supports such claims. What makes the Baigong mystery particularly frustrating for researchers is the site's remoteness and the limited access allowed by Chinese authorities. Detailed excavation and analysis have been restricted, leaving many questions unanswered. Satellite imagery reveals the formations clearly, but ground truthing and comprehensive study remain limited. The pipes seem to represent another example of anomalous archaeological evidence that doesn't fit neatly into our understanding of ancient capabilities or natural processes. Whether they're geological curiosities or technological artifacts, they remind us that remote corners of the world may still hold surprises that challenge our assumptions about the past. Standing in that harsh landscape, with the wind sweeping across empty hills and the salt lake stretching to distant mountains, you can understand why local people developed legends about otherworldly inhabitants. The isolation and strangeness of the place seem to invite mystery. Whether the pipes represent forgotten human ingenuity or simply nature's capacity for creating formations that look impossibly artificial. From China's remote highlands, we travel to the frozen reaches of northern Canada, where one of history's most disturbing disappearance mysteries continues to haunt the imagination. In the vast wilderness of the Kivalik region, near the shores of Lake Anjikuni, lies the site of what may have been one of the most inexplicable vanishing acts ever recorded. The story emerged in 1930 when trapper Joe LaBelle, an experienced outdoorsman familiar with the rhythms of northern life, arrived at what should have been a thriving Inuit settlement. Instead of the usual sounds of daily life, he found only silence. The village appeared completely abandoned, with food still sitting over cold fires and sled dogs found dead from starvation, still tethered to their posts. What made LaBelle's discovery so disturbing was not just the abandonment, but the complete absence of any explanation. Personal belongings remained where they'd been left. Essential winter supplies sat unused, and there were no tracks leading away from the settlement. In the harsh Arctic environment, leaving behind winter gear and food supplies would have been a death sentence for the villagers. The mystery deepened when authorities investigated LaBelle's report. Search parties confirmed that an entire community had vanished without leaving any clear trail or evidence of where they might have gone. In Inuit culture, such abandonment of essential resources would have been completely contrary to survival practices developed over thousands of years of Arctic living. Various theories have been proposed to explain the Anjikuni disappearance. Some suggest that harsh environmental conditions or a sudden natural disaster might have forced a rapid evacuation, though this fails to explain the absence of tracks or the abandonment of survival gear. Others propose that the community might have been forced to flee by hostile groups, though no evidence of violence was found at the site. More speculative explanations have included everything from mass abduction to supernatural intervention. The remote location and the thoroughness of the disappearance have made the incident a favourite subject for those interested in unexplained phenomena. However, the lack of contemporary documentation and the reliance on second-hand accounts have led some researchers to question whether the event occurred exactly as reported. The story of Anjikuni has become entangled with broader themes about the vulnerability of indigenous communities and the harsh realities of Arctic survival. Whether the disappearance was as complete and mysterious as early reports suggested, or whether it represents a tragic but more mundane series of events that became mythologized over time, it highlights the precarious nature of life in the world's most unforgiving environments. The Arctic landscape where Anjikuni once stood remains largely unchanged, its frozen expanses hiding whatever evidence might remain beneath layers of snow and ice. The silence that Joe LaBelle encountered that winter day continues to echo across the tundra, carrying questions about human vulnerability and the mysteries that can unfold in the world's most isolated places. Today, the site serves as a reminder that even in our connected modern world, there are still places remote enough and harsh enough that entire communities can vanish, leaving behind only questions and the endless whisper of Arctic wind across empty land. These mysteries of disappearance and abandonment share a common thread with the architectural enigmas we've explored. They all represent moments when the normal flow of human activity was suddenly interrupted, leaving behind evidence of ambitions unfulfilled, projects abandoned, or communities that simply vanished into history's silent void. But perhaps the most intriguing category of unexplained phenomena involves objects and artifacts that seem to challenge our understanding of ancient technological capabilities. Hidden in museums and private collections around the world are items that continue to puzzle researchers, representing either remarkable achievements of ancient craftsmanship or evidence of knowledge systems we've yet to fully comprehend. In the coastal regions of Costa Rica, scattered across fields and hidden in jungle clearings, hundreds of perfectly spherical stone objects wait to reveal their secrets. These spheres range from small orbs the size of basketballs to massive monuments weighing 15 tons and measuring over 6 feet in diameter. Their surfaces are so precisely carved that they deviate only millimeters from perfect geometric spheres. The spheres were created by the Diquis culture, a pre-Columbian society that flourished between 700 and 1500 AD. Yet despite their obvious importance to the people who made them, no clear explanation exists for their purpose or the techniques used to achieve such remarkable precision. The spheres appear to have been positioned in specific arrangements, some forming geometric patterns that suggest astronomical or ceremonial significance. What makes these artifacts particularly mysterious is the sophistication required to create them. Carving a perfect sphere from hard stone using only primitive tools would challenge even modern craftsmen. The ancient sculptors somehow managed to achieve mathematical precision across hundreds of objects, suggesting either highly developed techniques or knowledge systems that we don't fully understand. Many of the spheres have been moved from their original positions, scattered to gardens and town squares, where they serve as decorative curiosities rather than archaeological evidence. This displacement has made it impossible to study their original arrangements and potential meanings, adding another layer to the mystery surrounding their purpose and significance. From Costa Rica's enigmatic spheres, we turn to Europe, where underground tunnel systems discovered across multiple countries present another category of unexplained ancient construction. Known as Erdstahl tunnels, these narrow passages wind through bedrock in regions of Germany, Austria, and Scotland, their purpose as mysterious as their origins. The tunnels are typically just large enough for a person to crawl through, connecting small chambers through tight squeeze holes that require significant effort to navigate. They show careful construction and planning, yet they seem impractical for any obvious purpose. They're too small for effective storage, too cramped for comfortable habitation, and too isolated to serve obvious defensive functions. Dating these tunnels has proven difficult due to the absence of artifacts or organic materials within them. They appear to be medieval in origin, yet no historical records describe their construction or use. The consistency of design across different regions suggests shared knowledge or purpose, but what that purpose might have been remains completely unclear. Theories about the Erdstahl tunnels range from practical to mystical. Some suggest they served as hiding places during times of conflict, though their impractical design makes this seem unlikely. Others propose religious or ritualistic purposes, perhaps representing symbolic journeys through death and rebirth. The most intriguing possibility is that they formed part of a communication or transportation network we no longer understand. The tunnels represent another example of ancient construction projects that seem to have required significant effort and planning, yet serve purposes that remain opaque to modern understanding. Like so many other archaeological mysteries, they remind us that our ancestors' motivations and knowledge systems may have been far more complex and sophisticated than we typically assume. These unexplained artifacts and constructions share a common characteristic. They represent human capabilities and intentions that don't fit neatly into our current understanding of ancient civilizations. Whether they're perfectly carved stone spheres, precisely engineered tunnel systems, or massive megalithic constructions that challenge modern engineering, they all suggest that the past holds secrets we're only beginning to glimpse. As we've journeyed through these various mysteries, from buried tombs to vanished civilizations, from impossible constructions to enigmatic artifacts, a pattern emerges. Each represents a moment when human ambition, creativity, or knowledge exceeded what we'd expect from its historical context. They're windows into capabilities we've forgotten, techniques we've lost, or perhaps ways of understanding the world that disappeared along with the cultures that created them. The silence surrounding these mysteries is perhaps their most haunting characteristic. Unlike the great monuments and achievements that ancient peoples proudly documented, these enigmas exist in the gaps between recorded history. They whisper questions about what else might be hidden beneath our feet, locked away in sealed chambers, or scattered across landscapes we've barely begun to explore. The mysteries we've encountered so far represent puzzles that challenge our understanding of human capability and intention. But there's another category of enigma that strikes even closer to the heart of our existence. Ancient texts and symbols that seem to contain messages we can no longer decode, languages that have fallen silent, and records that might hold keys to understanding civilizations we've barely glimpsed. Hidden away in the archives of a small Hungarian library lies a manuscript that has confounded scholars for nearly 2 centuries. The pages are filled with symbols unlike any writing system known to modern linguistics. Thousands of unique characters that seem to dance across yellowed parchment in patterns that suggest meaning, yet refuse to yield their secrets to any attempt at translation. The book contains over 400 manuscript pages covered in this mysterious script, accompanied by illustrations that blend Christian imagery with Islamic and pagan elements in ways that suggest either a syncretic religious tradition or perhaps the work of someone attempting to reconcile different belief systems. The drawings depict scenes of daily life, religious ceremonies, and warfare, but their context remains as mysterious as the text that surrounds them. What makes this manuscript particularly intriguing is not just its undecipherable script, but the sheer consistency and complexity of the writing system. The symbols appear in patterns that suggest grammatical structure, with certain characters appearing more frequently in specific positions, implying rules and conventions that govern their use. Yet despite decades of analysis by linguists, cryptographers, and computer scientists, not a single word has been successfully translated. The manuscript's origins are as mysterious as its contents. It appeared in the early 19th century with no clear provenance, no documentation of who created it or why. Some scholars believe it represents the secret writings of a religious sect that sought to protect its teachings from persecution. Others suggest it might be an elaborate hoax, though the consistency and complexity of the script would represent a remarkable feat of imagination and dedication for a forger. Modern technology has been brought to bear on the mystery, with digital analysis revealing subtle patterns in character frequency and distribution that suggest the text follows linguistic rules rather than random symbol placement. This evidence supports the theory that it represents a genuine writing system rather than meaningless decoration or deliberate deception. Yet the manuscript continues to guard its secrets with stubborn persistence. Each apparent breakthrough in analysis leads only to new complications, new patterns that don't quite fit established theories about how writing systems develop and function. The text remains as enigmatic today as it was when first discovered, a reminder that human communication can take forms we've yet to understand. Across the Atlantic, in the archives of Yale University, another mysterious manuscript presents an even more perplexing puzzle. The Voynich manuscript, named after the book dealer who acquired it in the early 20th century, appears to be a medieval encyclopedia of knowledge covering subjects from botany to astronomy to medicine. Yet its text is written in a script that has resisted every attempt at decipherment for over a century. The manuscript's pages are filled with detailed illustrations of plants that don't match any known species, astronomical diagrams that seem to follow unfamiliar systems, and elaborate drawings of nude figures engaged in activities that might represent medical procedures or ritual practices. The accompanying text flows across the pages in neat lines of symbols that look almost familiar, yet remain completely incomprehensible. Carbon dating places the manuscript's creation in the early 15th century, making it genuinely medieval rather than a modern fabrication. The quality of the parchment, the composition of the inks, and the style of the illustrations all confirm its authentic age. Yet the knowledge it appears to contain seems divorced from the established medieval understanding of natural philosophy and medicine. Cryptographers who broke enemy codes during World War II have examined the Voynich manuscript and declared it more challenging than any cipher they encountered during wartime. Computer analysis has revealed statistical patterns consistent with natural language, suggesting the text represents genuine communication rather than random gibberish. Yet the meaning remains locked away, taunting researchers with its apparent logic and complete incomprehensibility. Some theories propose that the manuscript represents the work of a brilliant individual who developed their own system of knowledge classification and symbolic representation. Others suggest it might be the remnant of a lost scholarly tradition that used symbolic rather than alphabetic writing to record complex information. The most speculative theories imagine it as evidence of contact with non-human intelligence, though such claims lack any supporting evidence beyond the text's undeniable strangeness. The mystery of these undeciphered manuscripts reflects a broader category of ancient communication that continues to puzzle modern scholars. Across Europe, archaeological sites have yielded inscriptions in scripts that appear to represent writing systems, yet remain untranslatable due to lack of context or bilingual texts that might provide decipherment keys. In the Danube River Valley, artifacts from the ancient Vinča culture bear symbols that some researchers believe represent Europe's earliest writing system, predating Mesopotamian cuneiform by thousands of years. The symbols appear on pottery, figurines, and stone tablets in patterns that suggest systematic use rather than random decoration. Yet without longer texts or clear contexts, their meaning remains speculative. The symbols include geometric shapes, abstract designs, and forms that might represent plants, animals, or astronomical phenomena. Their consistency across different sites and time periods suggests they held specific meanings for the Vinča people, possibly serving as markers of ownership, religious significance, or even early attempts at recording information. What makes these symbols particularly intriguing is their apparent sophistication. Rather than simple pictographs representing concrete objects, many appear to be abstract concepts that would require a more developed understanding of symbolic representation. If they do represent writing, they would suggest that the cognitive leap from concrete to abstract thinking occurred much earlier in European prehistory than previously believed. The debate over whether these symbols constitute genuine writing continues to divide archaeologists and linguists. Some argue that without clear evidence of systematic grammar and syntax, they represent proto-writing at best, symbolic systems that conveyed meaning but hadn't yet developed into full linguistic notation. Others maintain that the consistency and complexity of the symbols suggest a genuine writing system whose principles we simply haven't yet grasped. This uncertainty reflects the broader challenge of understanding ancient communication systems. Writing leaves traces in the archaeological record, but meaning requires context, cultural knowledge, and often bilingual texts that can serve as translation keys. When civilizations disappear completely, taking their cultural contexts with them, their writing systems can become permanently incomprehensible, regardless of how sophisticated they might have been. The silence of these undeciphered texts creates a particular kind of frustration for researchers. Unlike architectural mysteries, where we can at least admire the engineering achievement, or artifact puzzles where we can appreciate the craftsmanship, undeciphered writing represents knowledge that seems tantalizingly close, yet remains completely inaccessible. The symbols stare back at us from museum displays and academic publications, carrying messages we may never understand. From the realm of mysterious texts, we turn to an equally puzzling category of ancient artifacts that challenge our understanding of prehistoric technology and knowledge. Scattered across remote locations around the world, researchers have discovered objects that seem to represent capabilities far in advance of what we'd expect from their historical contexts. Deep in the Sahara Desert, in regions now so arid that they can barely support life, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of sophisticated ancient cultures that thrived when the landscape was green and fertile. Among the artifacts they've discovered are objects that suggest knowledge of advanced metallurgy, precision toolmaking, and possibly even early forms of machinery. Stone tools found at these sites show evidence of manufacturing techniques that require understanding of materials science and engineering principles. Some implements display precision that would be difficult to achieve even with modern hand tools, suggesting either remarkably advanced skill levels or possibly techniques we haven't yet understood. The tools' designs seem optimized for specific functions in ways that imply systematic experimentation and refinement over long periods. Most intriguingly, some sites have yielded metal objects that appear to have been created using processes more sophisticated than simple smelting and hammering. Analysis has revealed alloy compositions that suggest controlled temperature regulation and possibly even early forms of chemical processing. The precision of some metalwork implies knowledge of techniques that weren't supposed to have been developed until much later in human technological development. The mystery deepens when you consider the environmental context of these discoveries. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. During the African humid period, roughly 9,000 to 5,000 years ago, it supported rivers, lakes, and grasslands that could sustain large populations. The people who lived there had access to resources and developed technologies that disappeared when the climate changed and the region became uninhabitable. This pattern of advanced ancient technology appears in other locations, where environmental changes forced populations to abandon sophisticated settlements. In underwater archaeology sites off various coastlines, researchers have discovered evidence of communities that possessed knowledge systems and technical capabilities that seem inconsistent with their supposed place in the timeline of human technological development. Submerged off the coast of India, structures have been found that appear to represent urban planning and construction techniques of remarkable sophistication. The layout of streets, the engineering of drainage systems, and the precision of stone cutting all suggest communities that had developed advanced understanding of architecture and civil engineering thousands of years before such knowledge was supposed to have emerged. Similar discoveries have been made in other coastal regions where rising sea levels have preserved evidence of ancient settlements. The structures show evidence of mathematical precision in their planning, sophisticated understanding of materials and engineering principles, and organizational capabilities that required complex social systems to coordinate and execute. What makes these discoveries particularly significant is not just their individual technical achievements, but what they suggest about the continuity of human knowledge. Rather than technological development following a simple linear progression from primitive to advanced, these sites suggest that human capabilities have fluctuated significantly over time, with periods of remarkable achievement followed by apparent regression or loss of knowledge. The implications are profound. If ancient peoples possessed technical knowledge that we've assumed was developed much later, it suggests that human intellectual capability has been relatively constant throughout history, with variations in achievement being more a function of environmental conditions, resource availability, and social organization than fundamental cognitive development. This perspective challenges many assumptions about technological progress and human civilization. Instead of viewing ourselves as the inevitable culmination of a steady march toward greater sophistication, we might need to consider that we're simply the current inheritors of knowledge traditions that have risen and fallen multiple times throughout human history. The archaeological evidence suggests that climate change, natural disasters, and social upheavals have repeatedly disrupted advanced civilizations, forcing populations to abandon sophisticated settlements and technologies. Knowledge that took generations to develop could be lost in a single catastrophic event, leaving only fragments and hints of former capabilities. This pattern of loss and seem to represent knowledge that appears anachronistic for discovery might explain why so many ancient artifacts, their supposed time periods. Rather than being impossibly advanced for their era, they might represent the remnants of knowledge traditions that were once more widespread, but became isolated and eventually disappeared as environmental and social conditions changed. The mystery extends beyond individual artifacts to encompass entire categories of ancient knowledge. Astronomical observations recorded in stone monuments suggest understanding of celestial mechanics that required centuries of careful observation and mathematical analysis. Medical procedures described in ancient texts imply knowledge of anatomy and pharmacology that seems remarkably sophisticated for peoples who supposedly lacked scientific methods. Mathematical concepts embedded in architectural proportions demonstrate understanding of geometric principles that weren't supposed to have been formalized until much later in history. Engineering achievements like precision stone cutting and massive construction projects suggest technical capabilities that challenge our assumptions about ancient tool technology and organizational systems. These discoveries force us to reconsider not just the timeline of human technological development, but the very nature of knowledge itself. Perhaps human understanding doesn't progress in a straight line from ignorance to enlightenment, but rather fluctuates based on environmental conditions, social stability, and the preservation or loss of accumulated wisdom. The silence surrounding these advanced ancient achievements reflects the same pattern we've seen with other categories of unsolved mysteries. Knowledge systems that required generations to develop could disappear within decades if the social structures that supported them collapsed. Without written records or institutional continuity, even the most sophisticated understanding could become lost history, leaving only puzzling artifacts to hint at former capabilities. Standing before these mysterious objects in museum displays or archaeological sites, you can almost sense the presence of the brilliant minds that created them. Ancient engineers solving complex problems, craftspeople perfecting techniques through years of experimentation, scholars developing theoretical frameworks that guided practical applications. Their achievements represent human potential that seems to transcend the supposed limitations of their historical periods. Yet their silence is also haunting. These artifacts speak of knowledge traditions that reached remarkable heights only to vanish completely, taking with them understanding that might have accelerated human development if it had been preserved. They remind us that progress is not inevitable, that knowledge can be lost as easily as it's gained, and that civilizations can rise and fall, leaving only fragments to puzzle future archaeologists. The mystery of these advanced ancient technologies connects to broader questions about human potential and the factors that enable or constrain intellectual development. If ancient peoples could achieve such sophisticated understanding with limited resources and primitive tools, what does that suggest about the relationship between knowledge and material conditions? How much of human capability is latent, waiting for the right circumstances to emerge? These questions become particularly relevant as we face our own environmental and social challenges. The ancient sites that produce such remarkable technologies were often abandoned not because of intellectual failure, but because of environmental changes or social disruptions that made their continued development impossible. Their fate reminds us that even the most advanced civilizations remain vulnerable to forces beyond their control. The mystery of lost ancient knowledge thus serves as both inspiration and warning. It demonstrates human potential for remarkable achievement, while also highlighting the fragility of the conditions that enable such development. The silence of these vanished knowledge traditions echoes across time, carrying lessons about both the heights we can reach and the precipice from which we can fall. As our exploration of these various mysteries draws toward its current conclusion, patterns begin to emerge that connect seemingly disparate enigmas. Whether we're examining buried tombs that resist excavation, vanished civilizations that left no clear traces, architectural achievements that challenge modern engineering, or artifacts that suggest lost knowledge traditions, they all share certain characteristics that make them particularly resistant to conventional explanation. These mysteries exist in the spaces between documented history and archaeological evidence, in the gaps where normal processes of cultural transmission and preservation have failed. They represent moments when the usual continuities of human civilization were interrupted, leaving behind puzzles that continue to challenge our understanding of the past and our assumptions about human capability. The most haunting aspect of these enduring mysteries might be their very resistance to modern technology and understanding. We live in an age where satellites can map every inch of the Earth's surface, where ground-penetrating radar can see deep into the soil, where DNA analysis can identify individuals from fragments of bone thousands of years old. Yet these ancient enigmas continue to slip through the net of our most sophisticated investigative tools. Consider the peculiar case of the Roman dodecahedrons, small 12-sided bronze objects that have been discovered across northwestern Europe for nearly 3 centuries. Over 100 of these intricate artifacts have been found, scattered from Britain to Switzerland, each one carefully crafted with pentagonal faces, circular holes of varying sizes, and small knobs at every corner. Their construction required advanced metallurgical skills and considerable resources, suggesting they held significant value for their creators. What makes these objects truly mysterious is not their craftsmanship, but their complete absence from any Roman record. Despite Rome's meticulous documentation of military equipment, religious artifacts, tools, and everyday objects, not a single text or inscription mentions these dodecahedrons. They exist in a documentation void that seems almost impossible for such a record-keeping civilization. The objects vary in size from golf ball to grapefruit dimensions, with hole patterns that show no clear standardization. This variety has frustrated attempts to determine their function through reverse engineering or comparison with known Roman tools. They've been found with coin hoards, suggesting value, and in graves, implying personal significance, yet their purpose remains completely opaque. Theories abound, naturally. Some researchers propose they were surveying instruments, used to measure distances or angles on battlefields or construction sites. Others suggest religious or ritual functions, particularly given their discovery in frontier regions where Roman culture mixed with indigenous traditions. The geometric perfection of their 12-sided form has led to speculation about astronomical uses or symbolic representations of cosmic principles. More practical theories imagine them as tools for determining pipe diameters, gauging chain mail ring sizes, or even as knitting aids for creating gloves and mittens. Yet none of these explanations can account for the range of hole sizes, the careful craftsmanship invested in objects that would be purely utilitarian, or their geographical distribution pattern. The mystery deepens when you consider that these objects appear exclusively in the northern provinces of the Roman Empire, regions where local Celtic and Germanic cultures maintained strong influences despite Roman occupation. Not one has ever been found in Rome itself or in the Mediterranean heartland of the empire. This distribution suggests they might represent a fusion of Roman metalworking skills with indigenous knowledge systems that left no written trace. Standing in museums across Europe, these bronze dodecahedrons seem to whisper questions about knowledge traditions that flourished in the spaces between cultures. They represent the kind of practical wisdom that might have been passed down through apprenticeships and family traditions, never considered important enough to document formally, yet sophisticated enough to require generations of refinement. From the realm of mysterious Roman artifacts, we turn our attention to an even more perplexing category of ancient enigma: texts and documents that appear to contain knowledge, yet resist every attempt at translation or interpretation. Hidden in libraries and archives around the world are manuscripts that seem to pulse with meaning, their symbols and illustrations suggesting complex information systems that remain completely inaccessible to modern scholarship. In the quiet halls of Yale University's Beinecker Library, perhaps the most famous of these enigmatic texts rests behind climate-controlled glass. The Voynich manuscript has been called the most mysterious book in the world, and after more than a century of analysis by the world's best cryptographers, linguists and computer scientists, it has earned that reputation through sheer stubborn resistance to interpretation. The manuscript's pages flow with an elegant script that looks almost familiar, as if it should be readable, yet remains completely incomprehensible. The text is accompanied by elaborate illustrations that seem to depict botanical, astronomical, and medical knowledge. Yet the plants don't match any known species. The astronomical diagrams follow unfamiliar systems, and the medical procedures appear to involve practices no historical tradition has documented. Carbon dating confirms the manuscript's medieval origins, ruling out modern fabrication. The quality of the parchment, the composition of the inks, and the style of the illustrations all authenticate its 15th century creation. Statistical analysis of the text reveals patterns consistent with natural language rather than random symbol generation, suggesting genuine communication rather than decorative nonsense. Yet, despite decades of effort by experts who successfully broke enemy codes during World War II, despite computer analysis that can detect patterns invisible to human perception, despite theories ranging from forgotten scholarly traditions to alien communication, the Voynich manuscript continues to guard its secrets with absolute determination. The botanical section presents the most tantalizing puzzle. The illustrations show detailed drawings of plants with roots, stems, leaves, and flowers rendered with the precision of scientific observation. Yet botanists have been unable to identify a single species. Some appear to combine features from different plant families in ways that suggest either artistic license or possibly documentation of species that no longer exist. The astronomical section contains circular diagrams filled with symbols and connected by lines that suggest systematic relationships. Some researchers have proposed these might represent calendar systems, astrological calculations, or astronomical observations recorded in symbolic rather than mathematical notation. The patterns seem intentional and structured, yet they don't match any known system of celestial record keeping. Most mysterious of all is the biological section, which depicts numerous nude female figures engaged in activities involving elaborate systems of tubes, pools, and containers. Some researchers interpret these as medical procedures, others as alchemical processes, and still others as ritual or religious practices. The figures appear healthy and purposeful rather than distressed, suggesting these activities were considered beneficial rather than punitive. The text that accompanies these illustrations flows in neat paragraphs and appears to follow grammatical conventions. Certain letter combinations appear more frequently at the beginning of words, others at the end, suggesting the kind of structural patterns found in natural languages. Computer analysis has identified what appear to be different sections with varying statistical properties, as if different topics required different vocabularies or writing styles. This linguistic sophistication makes the manuscript's resistance to translation even more frustrating. If it represents a genuine language or cipher, it should be susceptible to the same analytical techniques that have unlocked other historical codes and forgotten scripts. The fact that it continues to resist such analysis suggests either extraordinary sophistication in its construction or perhaps underlying principles that don't match our assumptions about how information systems work. The mystery extends beyond the manuscript itself to questions about who created it and why. Medieval Europe produced many scholarly works on medicine, astronomy, and natural philosophy, yet none match the Voynich manuscript's unique approach to organizing and presenting information. The level of detail in the illustrations suggests first-hand observation and experimentation, yet the knowledge appears divorced from established medieval traditions. Some theories propose that the manuscript represents the work of a brilliant individual who developed their own system of symbolic notation to record complex observations and theories. Others suggest it might be the remnant of a lost scholarly tradition that used visual and symbolic rather than alphabetic communication to preserve knowledge. The most speculative theories imagine it as evidence of contact with non-human intelligence, though such claims remain unsupported by anything beyond the text's undeniable strangeness. The persistence of the Voynich mystery in our age of advanced analytical tools serves as a humbling reminder that human communication can take forms we haven't yet learned to recognize or understand. The manuscript sits in its climate-controlled case, its pages filled with what appears to be systematic knowledge, yet as incomprehensible today as when it was first examined over a century ago. Moving from mysterious manuscripts to enigmatic symbols, we encounter another category of ancient communication that continues to puzzle researchers. Scattered across archaeological sites in southeastern Europe, artifacts from the Vincha culture bear markings that might represent Europe's earliest writing system, predating Mesopotamian developments by thousands of years. The Vincha symbols appear on pottery, figurines, and stone tablets found at sites along the Danube River Valley. They include geometric shapes, abstract designs, and forms that might represent plants, animals, or astronomical phenomena. Their consistency across different locations and time periods suggests systematic use rather than random decoration, yet their meaning remains completely speculative. What makes these symbols particularly intriguing is their apparent sophistication. Rather than simple pictographs representing concrete objects, many appear to be abstract concepts that would require advanced understanding of symbolic representation. If they do constitute genuine writing, they would suggest that the cognitive leap from concrete to abstract thinking occurred much earlier in European prehistory than previously believed. The symbols range from simple lines and dots to complex combinations that might represent compound concepts or grammatical relationships. Some appear repeatedly in similar contexts, suggesting they might function as determinatives or classifiers that organize other symbols into categories. Others seem to vary in ways that might indicate grammatical inflection or semantic modification. Archaeological evidence suggests the Vincha culture was remarkably advanced for its time period, with sophisticated metallurgy, urban planning, and long-distance trade networks. Their settlements show evidence of social stratification and specialized crafts production, indicating the kind of complex society that might require systematic record-keeping or symbolic communication. Yet the debate over whether these markings constitute genuine writing continues to divide researchers. Some argue that without clear evidence of syntactic structure and grammatical rules, they represent proto-writing at best, symbolic systems that conveyed meaning but hadn't yet developed into full linguistic notation. Others maintain that the consistency and complexity of the symbol system suggests genuine writing whose principles we simply haven't grasped. This uncertainty reflects broader challenges in understanding ancient communication systems. Writing leaves physical traces in the archaeological record, but meaning requires cultural context, linguistic knowledge, and often bilingual texts that can serve as translation keys. When civilizations disappear completely, taking their cultural frameworks with them, their communication systems can become permanently incomprehensible, regardless of their original sophistication. The silence of these undeciphered symbol systems creates a particular kind of intellectual frustration. Unlike architectural mysteries where we can at least admire the engineering achievement, or technological puzzles where we can appreciate the craftsmanship, undeciphered writing represents knowledge that seems tantalizingly accessible, yet remains completely closed to understanding. The symbols stare back at us from museum displays and academic publications, carrying messages that their creators considered important enough to preserve in permanent form. They represent thoughts, observations, records, or instructions that once held meaning for living communities, yet now exist as mute testimony to communication systems we may never recover. From the realm of mysterious communication, we turn to a category of ancient artifacts that challenges our understanding of prehistoric knowledge and capability. Hidden in remote locations around the world, researchers continue to discover objects that suggest technical understanding far in advance of what we typically associate with their historical periods. In the high deserts of Peru, among the massive stone constructions at Sacsayhuaman, blocks weighing hundreds of tons have been fitted together with precision that rivals modern engineering standards. The stones show no mortar between joints, yet they fit so perfectly that not even a knife blade can slide between them. The surfaces have been carved to complex three-dimensional curves that interlock like puzzle pieces, distributing weight and stress in ways that have allowed the structures to survive centuries of earthquakes that destroyed later Spanish colonial buildings. What makes these achievements particularly mysterious is not just their technical sophistication, but the apparent ease with which ancient builders accomplished what would challenge modern construction techniques. The blocks show evidence of precision cutting, transport over difficult terrain, and assembly methods that remain largely theoretical even today. The tools supposedly available to pre-Columbian cultures, bronze implements and stone hammers, seem inadequate for such precision work on such a massive scale. Similar mysteries appear at other ancient sites where massive stones have been shaped and positioned with remarkable accuracy. At Baalbek in Lebanon, the foundation stones of the Roman temple include blocks weighing over 800 tons, far exceeding the lifting capacity of any documented Roman construction equipment. The quarry nearby contains even larger stones, including one weighing over 1,600 tons that was shaped but never moved, suggesting ancient ambitions that exceeded even their remarkable capabilities. These megalithic achievements raise fundamental questions about ancient knowledge and techniques. Either our understanding of prehistoric capabilities is seriously incomplete, or these sites represent knowledge traditions that developed sophisticated solutions to engineering problems we're only beginning to appreciate. The precision of the stonework suggests not just brute force and determination, but understanding of materials science, structural engineering, and mathematical principles that wouldn't be formally codified for centuries. The mystery deepens when you consider the organizational requirements for such projects. Moving and positioning stones of this magnitude would require coordinated efforts involving hundreds or thousands of workers, sophisticated planning, and logistical systems capable of managing complex multi-year construction projects. Yet the societies that accomplish these feats are often characterized as relatively simple cultures without the social complexity supposedly necessary for such undertakings. Archaeological evidence from these sites suggests that the builders possessed knowledge systems that integrated practical engineering with astronomical observation, mathematical calculation, and possibly symbolic or religious significance. The orientations of many megalithic structures align with celestial events, suggesting that their creators combined technical capability with sophisticated understanding of astronomical cycles. This integration of practical and theoretical knowledge appears in other categories of mysterious ancient artifacts. In Baghdad's National Museum, a small clay jar known as the Baghdad Battery has puzzled researchers since its discovery in the 1930s. The artifact consists of a copper cylinder and iron rod sealed within a clay vessel, an arrangement that could theoretically generate electrical current if filled with an acidic solution. While the object's actual function remains debated, its construction suggests familiarity with principles that weren't supposed to be understood until much later in technological development. Whether it represents an early battery, a storage container, or something else entirely, it demonstrates the kind of systematic experimentation and material understanding that challenges conventional timelines of scientific discovery. Similar examples appear in metallurgical artifacts that show evidence of advanced alloy composition, precision manufacturing techniques, and understanding of material properties that seem anachronistic for their supposed time periods. Ancient metalworkers appear to have developed solutions to technical problems through empirical experimentation and accumulated knowledge that was passed down through craft traditions rather than formal scientific documentation. The persistence of these technological mysteries suggests that human intellectual capability has remained relatively constant throughout history, with variations in achievement reflecting environmental conditions, resource availability, and social organization rather than fundamental cognitive development. Ancient peoples facing practical challenges developed sophisticated solutions using the same problem-solving abilities that drive modern innovation. This perspective challenges linear narratives of technological progress and suggests instead that human knowledge has fluctuated significantly over time, with periods of remarkable achievement followed by apparent regression when environmental or social conditions made continued development impossible. Advanced understanding could be lost as easily as it was gained, leaving only puzzling artifacts to hint at former capabilities. The silence surrounding these advanced ancient technologies reflects the same pattern we've seen throughout our exploration of unsolved mysteries. Knowledge systems that required generations to develop could disappear within decades if the social structures that supported them collapsed. Without institutional continuity or written preservation, even the most sophisticated understanding could become lost history. These technological enigmas connect to broader questions about the relationship between knowledge and material conditions. If ancient peoples could achieve such sophisticated understanding with limited resources and primitive tools, what does that suggest about the factors that enable or constrain intellectual development? How much of human potential remains latent, waiting for appropriate circumstances to emerge? The archaeological record suggests that climate change, natural disasters, and social upheavals have repeatedly disrupted advanced civilizations, forcing populations to abandon sophisticated settlements and technologies. Knowledge that took centuries to accumulate could be lost in single catastrophic events, leaving only fragments to puzzle future investigators. This pattern of loss and rediscovery might explain why so many ancient artifacts seem anachronistic for their supposed time periods. Rather than being impossibly advanced for their era, they might represent remnants of knowledge traditions that were once more widespread but became isolated and eventually disappeared as conditions changed. Standing before these mysterious objects in museums or at archaeological sites, you can almost sense the presence of the brilliant minds that created them. Ancient engineers solving complex problems, craftspeople perfecting techniques through generations of experimentation, scholars developing theoretical frameworks that guided practical applications. Their achievements represent human potential that transcends the supposed limitations of their historical periods. Yet their silence remains haunting. These artifacts speak of knowledge traditions that reached remarkable heights, only to vanish completely, taking with them understanding that might have accelerated human development if it had been preserved. They remind us that progress isn't inevitable, that knowledge can be lost as easily as gained, and that civilizations can rise and fall, leaving only fragments to intrigue future archaeologists. As we near the end of our journey through these various mysteries, certain patterns become clear. Whether examining buried tombs that resist excavation, vanished civilizations that left minimal traces, architectural achievements that challenge modern understanding, or artifacts that suggest lost knowledge traditions, They all share characteristics that make them particularly resistant to conventional explanation. These mysteries exist in the spaces between documented history and archaeological evidence, in gaps where normal processes of cultural transmission and preservation have failed. They represent moments when usual continuities of human civilization were interrupted, leaving behind puzzles that continue to challenge our understanding of the past and our assumptions about human capability. The most profound aspect of these enduring enigmas might be what they suggest about the nature of knowledge itself. Rather than viewing human understanding as progressing steadily from ignorance toward enlightenment, these mysteries suggest that knowledge fluctuates based on environmental conditions, social stability, and the preservation or loss of accumulated wisdom. Each unsolved mystery serves as both inspiration and warning. They demonstrate remarkable human potential for achievement while highlighting the fragility of conditions that enable such development. The silence of vanished knowledge traditions echoes across time, carrying lessons about both heights we can reach and precipices from which we can fall. In our age of rapid technological advancement and global communication, it's tempting to believe we've moved beyond the vulnerabilities that claimed ancient civilizations. Yet these mysteries remind us that even the most sophisticated societies remain subject to forces beyond their control. Environmental changes, social disruptions, and the simple passage of time can erase achievements that seemed permanent to their creators. The enduring fascination of these unsolved mysteries lies not just in their individual puzzles, but in what they collectively suggest about human experience across time. They connect us to ancestors whose ambitions, creativity, and intellectual capabilities mirror our own, yet whose achievements often exceed our current understanding of what should have been possible in their circumstances. These ancient enigmas continue to beckon from museum displays, archaeological sites, and scholarly publications. They invite us to question our assumptions, to consider possibilities we hadn't imagined, and to remember that the past still holds secrets we're only beginning to glimpse. In their silence, they speak most eloquently about the mystery of human potential itself and the countless stories that remain waiting to be discovered in the hidden corners of our shared history. The desert winds that sweep across Egypt's western expanses carry more than sand. They carry whispers of one of history's most haunting disappearances, a mystery that began with the ambitions of a Persian king and ended in silence so complete it has endured for over 2 millennia. In 525 BC, Cambyses II, ruler of the mighty Persian Empire, had already conquered Egypt and toppled its ancient pharaohs. But his appetite for dominion stretched beyond the fertile Nile Valley toward the mysterious Oracle of Ammon at the Siwa Oasis. This sacred site, where gods were said to whisper divine truths to mortal seekers, represented a spiritual authority that the Persian king could not tolerate beyond his control. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, Cambyses dispatched 50,000 soldiers into the desert with orders to seize the oracle and assert Persian dominance over this sacred place. The army was massive by ancient standards, a force capable of conquering cities and subduing entire regions. They marched westward from the Nile Valley, their bronze weapons glinting under the desert sun, confident in their numbers and their king's divine mandate. For 7 days, the army advanced through the harsh landscape, following caravan routes that had connected Egypt to its western neighbors for centuries. They reached what ancient sources describe as the City of Oases, believed to be somewhere near modern-day Karga. There, according to the historical account, they prepared for the final push toward their target. Still hundreds of miles distant, crossed some of the most unforgiving terrain on Earth. Then something happened that defied every expectation of military campaign and desert travel. The entire army vanished, not defeated in battle, not captured by enemies, not scattered by tactical retreat. Simply gone, as if the desert itself had swallowed 50,000 men without leaving so much as a bronze arrowhead to mark their passage. Herodotus describes their fate as the work of a massive sandstorm, a sirocco wind so powerful it buried the soldiers alive beneath shifting dunes. The image is dramatic and terrible. Thousands of warriors engulfed by walls of sand, their cries lost in the howling wind, their bodies entombed in a desert that shows no mercy to human ambition. Yet for all its dramatic appeal, this explanation raises as many questions as it answers. Could even the fiercest sandstorm completely obliterate an army of 50,000 men, leaving no survivors, no stragglers, no evidence of their fate? Desert storms, however severe, typically scatter rather than bury their victims. Bodies, weapons, and equipment should have been found eventually, even if displaced by wind and sand. Modern expeditions have searched the Western Desert for traces of Cambyses' lost army, using satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and systematic archaeological surveys. In 2009, Italian archaeologists claimed to have found evidence of the vanished force, bronze weapons, horse harnesses, and other military artifacts scattered along ancient caravan routes. Yet their findings remain controversial, criticized by other researchers as inconclusive and potentially explainable by centuries of trade and migration through the region. The mystery deepens when you consider the logistical impossibility of such a complete disappearance. 50,000 soldiers would have required vast supply trains, thousands of pack animals, and extensive support personnel. Even if the fighting force itself met with disaster, the logistics tale should have included survivors who could have reported back to Persian authorities. The absolute silence that followed the army's departure suggests something more systematic than natural catastrophe. Some historians propose alternative explanations that seem almost as fantastic as the sandstorm theory. Could the army have been ambushed by desert tribes, overwhelmed by forces that knew the terrain and could strike without warning? Could they have become lost in the vast emptiness, wandering until thirst and exhaustion claimed them all? Could internal dissension have led to mutiny and dissolution, with survivors scattering rather than returning to face a king notorious for his violent temper? More speculative theories venture into territory where history meets legend. Some suggest the army stumbled upon something in the desert that was never meant to be found, something so sacred or dangerous that their discovery required permanent silence. Others whisper of curses associated with the Oracle of Ammon, divine retribution for Persian hubris in challenging the gods' sacred spaces. The truth, if it still exists, lies buried beneath centuries of shifting sand in one of the world's most hostile environments. The Western Desert keeps its secrets well, its vast expanses capable of hiding entire civilizations, let alone a single military expedition. Wind and time have erased whatever traces the Persian army might have left, leaving only questions that grow more intriguing with each passing century. Standing today in that immense landscape, watching the horizon shimmer under relentless sun, you can almost imagine the final moments of Cambyses' great expedition. Did they see the storm approaching, a wall of sand and wind that blotted out the sky? Did they try to take shelter, digging frantically into dunes that would become their tombs? Or did their fate come more gradually, a slow realization that they had ventured too far into a land that would never let them leave? The desert offers no answers, only the endless whisper of wind across sand, and the haunting possibility that somewhere beneath our feet lie the bones of 50,000 men who marched toward glory and found only silence. From the harsh deserts of Egypt, our journey takes us to the mist-shrouded landscapes of medieval Europe, where an equally mysterious disappearance occurred, not on a grand scale of armies, but in the intimate tragedy of individual lives lost to time. Yet sometimes the smallest mysteries can be the most haunting, especially when they touch on the deepest questions of human identity and belonging. In the rolling countryside of Suffolk, England, lies the village of Woolpit, a place whose name derives from the wolf traps that once dotted its fields. Today, it seems quintessentially English, with narrow lanes, thatched cottages, and the gentle rhythms of rural life that have persisted for centuries. But beneath this pastoral calm lies a story so strange that it has challenged scholars and storytellers for nearly 900 years. During the reign of King Stephen in the turbulent 12th century, harvest workers in Woolpit's fields encountered something that defied every category of their experience. Near the old wolf pits that gave the village its name, they found two children, a boy and a girl, standing alone and apparently lost. But these were not ordinary lost children. Their skin was green, distinctly and unmistakably green, as if they had somehow absorbed the colour of growing things. The children spoke no recognizable language, communicating only in sounds that meant nothing to the English villagers who found them. They refused the bread and meat offered to them, surviving only on raw beans pulled directly from their pods. The villagers, moved by basic human compassion despite their bewilderment, took the strange children in and attempted to care for them. Over time, the girl, who proved stronger than her companion, began to adapt to her new circumstances. She learned enough of the local language to communicate, though her brother grew weaker and eventually died, perhaps unable to adjust to foods and conditions so foreign to whatever world they had known before. As the girl learned to eat ordinary food, her unusual green coloration gradually faded to a more normal hue, though she never lost the otherworldly quality that set her apart from other village children. When she finally acquired enough language to tell her story, the account she gave only deepened the mystery. She described coming from a land of perpetual twilight, a place where the sun never shone and everything was tinged with green. She and her brother had been tending their father's flocks when they heard strange sounds like the ringing of bells. Following these sounds, they found themselves in a bright new world that bore no resemblance to the dim realm they remembered as home. Medieval chroniclers, including the respected historians William of Newburgh and Ralph of Coggeshall, recorded this tale independently, lending it a credibility that mere folklore would not possess. Their accounts, written decades apart, share consistent details that suggest they drew from reliable sources rather than popular legend. Yet the story they preserved seems to challenge every assumption about the medieval world's boundaries and possibilities. Modern historians have proposed various explanations for the green children of Woolpit. Some suggest they were Flemish immigrants, refugees from the religious and ethnic conflicts that periodically swept through medieval Europe. The green skin could have resulted from chlorosis, a form of iron deficiency anemia that can give the complexion a greenish cast, particularly in malnourished children. The strange language might have been a Flemish dialect, unfamiliar to English villagers, while the tale of a twilight land could represent a traumatized child's confused memory of dense forests where little sunlight penetrated. Yet even these rational explanations leave unsettling questions. How did the children appear so suddenly, without witnesses to their arrival or signs of recent travel? Why would their account of a sunless homeland be so consistent and detailed if it were merely the product of trauma or confusion? And what are we to make of the bell-like sounds that supposedly led them from their world into ours? The mystery touches on themes that appear in folklore across many cultures, hidden realms that exist parallel to our own, thin places where the boundaries between worlds might occasionally blur. The idea of fairyland, of otherworldly realms accessible through certain locations under specific circumstances, runs deep in European tradition. Were the green children perhaps visitors from such a realm? Evidence that the medieval world was stranger and more porous than we typically imagine. Alternative theories have suggested everything from underground societies of people who had adapted to subterranean life, to early encounters with visitors from other worlds entirely. Some point to the children's initial diet of raw beans, noting that legumes can survive in low-light conditions and might sustain a population living in caves or underground chambers. Others focus on the description of perpetual twilight, wondering if it might refer to a real place where geographical or atmospheric conditions created permanent dim lighting. The Green Children's story resonates across centuries because it captures something essential about the human experience of encountering the inexplicable. In a world where travel was difficult and dangerous, where most people lived and died within a few miles of their birthplace, the sudden appearance of children who seemed to come from nowhere challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality itself. Today, Woolpit acknowledges its legendary visitors with a simple sign bearing the image of two green-skinned children, marking the place where history and mystery meet. Visitors come seeking answers to questions that may have no earthly solutions, drawn by a story that refuses to fit neatly into categories of fact or fiction. Standing in those quiet lanes where medieval villagers once walked, you can almost sense the strangeness that must have descended on this peaceful place when the Green Children appeared. The mystery they represent goes beyond their unusual appearance or their incomprehensible origins. They embody the eternal human encounter with the unknown, with possibilities that stretch beyond the boundaries of our carefully mapped and measured world. Who were the Green Children of Woolpit? Lost refugees transformed by malnutrition and trauma into something that seemed otherworldly. Visitors from hidden realms that exist just beyond the edges of ordinary perception, or something else entirely. A mystery that will continue to haunt these English fields long after the last person who might remember their story has turned to dust. The children themselves have been silent for 8 centuries, their voices lost to time along with whatever truths they might have carried from their strange homeland. But their mystery endures, whispering questions about the nature of reality itself and the possibilities that might still be hiding in the forgotten corners of our world. Moving from medieval England to the bustling streets of 19th century Baltimore, we encounter another disappearance that has puzzled investigators and scholars for over a century and a half. This mystery centers not on unknown children from otherworldly realms, but on one of America's most celebrated literary figures, whose final days remain shrouded in circumstances so strange they could have emerged from one of his own dark tales. Edgar Allan Poe, master of the macabre and architect of literary terror, met his own mysterious end in October 1849 under conditions that would have challenged even his Gothic imagination. The man who created The Raven and The Telltale Heart became the subject of a real-life mystery that continues to resist solution despite decades of investigation and speculation. On October 3rd, Poe was found outside Ryan's Tavern in Baltimore, barely conscious and wearing clothes that did not belong to him. The garments were shabby and ill-fitting, completely unlike the careful dress of a man who, despite his financial struggles, maintained the appearance expected of a literary gentleman. He was delirious, unable to explain how he had come to be in such condition, or why he was in Baltimore when he was supposed to be traveling to New York. Poe was rushed to Washington Medical College, where he drifted in and out of consciousness for 4 agonizing days. Witnesses reported that he muttered strange, fragmented words, calling out names of people who were not present, engaging in conversations with invisible companions. His condition fluctuated between periods of apparent lucidity and episodes of complete disorientation, as if he were trapped between worlds of dream and waking. On October 7th, at the age of 40, Edgar Allan Poe died without ever regaining enough clarity to explain what had happened to him. His last coherent words, according to attending physicians, were, "Lord help my poor soul," a final plea from a man who had spent his career exploring the darkest corners of human experience. What makes Poe's death particularly mysterious is the complete absence of reliable medical records or detailed accounts of his final illness. No autopsy was performed, no death certificate survives, and the attending physicians left conflicting reports about his symptoms and condition. From the very beginning, the circumstances surrounding his death defied easy explanation. The earliest theories focused on Poe's well-documented struggles with alcohol, suggesting that a final binge had destroyed his health and left him dying in Baltimore's streets. Yet those who knew him best contested this explanation. pointing out that Poe had been sober for months before his death, and that his body showed unusual sensitivity to even small amounts of alcohol. The quantity of drink necessary to produce such severe symptoms seemed inconsistent with witness accounts of his behavior in the days before his collapse. Other investigators proposed that Poe had fallen victim to cooping, a brutal form of election fraud common in 19th century Baltimore. In this practice, gangs would kidnap unwilling victims, drug them, disguise them in different clothes, and force them to vote multiple times at various polling stations under false identities. The fact that Poe was found on election day wearing strange clothes and in a disoriented condition seemed to fit this pattern disturbingly well. The cooping theory would explain many of the mysterious circumstances surrounding Poe's final days. The ill-fitting clothes, the disorientation, the physical weakness, and the complete memory loss could all result from days of drugging, physical abuse, and forced participation in fraudulent voting schemes. Baltimore was notorious for such practices, and Poe's appearance and condition when found matched other documented cases of cooping victims. Yet even this explanation leaves haunting gaps in the narrative. Why did Poe linger for days before dying if his condition resulted from simple physical abuse? Why were his symptoms so severe and persistent? Was there more at play than straightforward criminal victimization? Medical historians have proposed various alternative diagnoses based on the fragmentary evidence available. Some suggest Poe suffered from undiagnosed brain lesions, possibly resulting from previous injuries or genetic conditions that could have caused the disorientation and eventual death. Others point to the possibility of diabetes, epilepsy, or even rare cases of cholera contracted during his travels. More recent theories have focused on environmental factors that might have contributed to Poe's mysterious illness. Carbon monoxide poisoning from poorly ventilated heating systems, heavy metal exposure from contaminated water or paint, and other toxic hazards common in 19th century urban environments could all produce symptoms similar to those Poe experienced. But beyond medical explanations lie darker possibilities that seem more fitting for the creator of The Fall of the House of Usher. Some historians have suggested that Poe's death might not have been accidental at all, but the result of deliberate harm by enemies made through his sharp literary criticism and personal conflicts. His reviews had earned him both admiration and bitter resentment, creating adversaries who might have had motives for revenge. The timing of Poe's death, occurring just as his literary career seemed poised for greater success, adds another layer of tragedy to the mystery. He had recently become engaged to his childhood sweetheart and was planning new projects that might have secured his financial future. His mysterious end cut short not just a life, but the possibility of literary works that might have further enriched American letters. Perhaps most unsettling of all are the connections between Poe's death and the themes that dominated his writing. The man who created tales of premature burial, of consciousness trapped between life and death, of minds dissolving into madness, experienced his own final days in a condition that seemed drawn from his darkest imaginings. Was this merely coincidence, or did Poe's fascination with the boundaries between sanity and madness, life and death, somehow prefigure his own fate? Today, Poe rests in a modest grave in Westminster Hall and Burying Ground, not far from where he was found dying in Baltimore's streets. Visitors leave coins, roses, and written tributes, gestures of remembrance for a man whose genius continues to influence literature and popular culture. Yet the true circumstances of his death remain as mysterious as any puzzle in his fiction. The Baltimore streets where Poe wandered in his final delirium have changed completely. Modern buildings rising where 19th century taverns and boarding houses once stood. But the mystery endures, as resistant to solution as the most carefully crafted locked room mystery. Did Edgar Allan Poe die from illness, accident, criminal victimization, or something more sinister? The answer lies buried with him, another secret claimed by the city that witnessed both his greatest triumph and his inexplicable end. Standing today in the cemetery where Poe is buried, Watching shadows move across weathered headstones, you can almost hear echoes of his voice, reciting the haunting refrains that made him famous. "Nevermore," cried his immortal raven, and perhaps that single word captures the essence of his mystery. The truth of Edgar Allan Poe's final days may remain forever beyond our reach, locked away in the same dark realm that inspired his greatest works, where questions multiply in the shadows and answers disappear like whispers in the wind. From the streets of 19th century Baltimore, our journey through unsolved mysteries takes us to the windswept shores of the North Sea, where an entire lost world lies hidden beneath the waves. This is not a mystery of individual disappearance or architectural enigma, but of an entire landscape and the people who called it home, swallowed by rising waters in one of prehistory's most dramatic transformations. 10,000 years ago, the North Sea was not the body of water we know today. Instead, a vast landmass stretched from what is now Scotland to the Netherlands and beyond, connecting Britain to continental Europe in an unbroken expanse of forests, rivers, and fertile plains. This lost world has been given a name drawn from the Doggerbank, a shallow area of the modern North Sea, Doggerland, the Atlantis of the North. Doggerland was a hunter-gatherer's paradise, rich with game, fish, and wild plants that could sustain substantial populations. Mammoths roamed its grasslands, while reindeer and red deer moved through its forests in seasonal migrations that human communities learned to predict and exploit. Rivers teemed with salmon and other fish, while the varied landscape provided nuts, berries, and medicinal plants that formed the foundation of Mesolithic life. Archaeological evidence suggests that Doggerland was not merely a bridge between landmasses, but a thriving region in its own right, possibly more densely populated than the higher ground that would eventually become modern Britain and Scandinavia. The people who lived there developed sophisticated understanding of their environment, creating tools, art, and social systems adapted to the rich but changing landscape they called home. Then the Ice Age ended, and everything changed. As massive ice sheets that had covered northern Europe for millennia began to melt, sea levels rose with catastrophic speed. What had been dry land became marsh, then shallow sea, then deep water. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but in geological terms, it was remarkably rapid, forcing human populations to retreat to higher ground or perish in the advancing waters. The final blow came around 8,200 years ago in the form of a massive tsunami triggered by the Storegga submarine landslide off the coast of Norway. Millions of tons of sediment suddenly collapsed into the deep ocean, generating waves that swept across the remaining lowlands of Doggerland with devastating force. Within hours, communities that had existed for thousands of years were wiped from the earth, their settlements buried beneath tons of mud and sand. The mystery of Doggerland lies not just in its dramatic destruction, but in what we've lost along with it. Entire chapters of human prehistory disappeared beneath the waves, taking with them evidence of how our ancestors adapted to rapidly changing environmental conditions. The social systems, technologies, and cultural achievements of Doggerland's inhabitants are largely unknown, preserved only in fragments that occasionally surface in fishing nets or wash up on beaches. Over the past century, North Sea fishing trawlers have brought up a remarkable array of prehistoric artifacts: mammoth tusks, antler tools, flint implements, and even fossilized human footprints pressed into ancient mud. Each discovery provides a tantalizing glimpse into the lost world of Doggerland, but the evidence remains fragmentary and difficult to interpret without broader archaeological context. Modern technology has begun to reveal the submerged landscape in unprecedented detail. Seismic surveys conducted for oil exploration have mapped the buried river valleys, hills, and coastlines of Doggerland, creating detailed pictures of a lost geography. Scientists can now trace the ancient Thames as it flowed across dry land to join the Rhine in a river system that drained much of northern Europe. What emerges from this research is a picture of a landscape as complex and varied as any in Europe today. Doggerland had mountains and valleys, forests and grasslands, rivers and lakes. It supported diverse ecosystems that provided everything human communities needed to thrive. The people who lived there were not primitive nomads scratching out a bare existence, but sophisticated hunter-gatherers who had learned to live in harmony with one of the richest environments on Earth. The loss of Doggerland represents one of the most significant destructions of human habitat in prehistoric Europe. Thousands of years of cultural development, technological innovation, and accumulated knowledge disappeared with the rising waters. Languages, stories, artistic traditions, and ways of life that had evolved over millennia were lost forever, leaving only scattered artifacts to hint at their former existence. Some researchers speculate that Doggerland might have been more than just a rich hunting ground. Its central location and abundant resources could have made it a hub of prehistoric trade and cultural exchange, a place where different populations met, intermarried, and shared innovations. If so, its loss might have fundamentally altered the trajectory of European prehistory, forcing populations into isolation that prevented the kind of cultural cross-pollination that drives innovation and development. The story of Doggerland serves as a powerful reminder of humanity's vulnerability to environmental change. The people who lived there were well adapted to their environment, skilled at exploiting its resources, and presumably as intelligent and capable as any human population. Yet when the climate changed and the seas rose, their entire world was swept away, leaving barely a trace of their existence. Today, as modern civilization faces its own environmental challenges, the fate of Doggerland carries particular resonance. Rising sea levels, changing weather patterns, and ecosystem disruption threaten coastal communities around the world. The archaeological record suggests that such transformations have happened before and will happen again, regardless of human wishes or plans. Standing on the beaches of eastern England or the Netherlands, looking out over waters that once covered dry land where our ancestors lived and died, you can almost imagine the final days of Doggerland. Perhaps some communities saw the rising waters coming and retreated to higher ground, carrying what they could of their possessions and memories. Others might have been caught by sudden floods or the great tsunami that finished what centuries of rising seas had begun. Their voices have been silent for 8,000 years, their settlements buried beneath meters of mud and sand. But occasionally, when storms churn the North Sea floor, or fishing nets drag across ancient riverbeds, fragments of their world return to the surface: a carved antler, a flint blade, a piece of worked wood, small tokens from a lost civilization that remind us how much of our shared human story remains hidden beneath the waves, waiting perhaps for future generations with better tools and deeper understanding to recover what we have lost. The mystery of Doggerland is not just about what disappeared, but about what we might still discover. Somewhere beneath the North Sea lie the preserved remains of settlements, workshops, art, and possibly even human remains from Europe's lost Atlantis. Each new discovery brings us closer to understanding how our ancestors lived, loved, and ultimately vanished into the rising waters of a changing world. The mystery of Doggerland connects to another enigma that challenges our understanding of ancient human capabilities and the technologies they might have possessed. Hidden in the archives of Iraq's National Museum, among artifacts from one of humanity's earliest civilizations, sits an object so peculiar that it continues to spark debate among archaeologists and scientists nearly a century after its discovery. The artifact appears deceptively simple: a small clay jar, roughly the size of a man's fist, sealed with asphalt and containing what looks like a corroded copper cylinder with an iron rod running through its center. To most observers, it would seem like nothing more than an ancient storage container, perhaps used to hold oils or medicines. But this unassuming object, known today as the Baghdad Battery, might represent evidence of electrical knowledge in the ancient world that predates our supposed discovery of such principles by over 2 millennia. The jar was unearthed in the 1930s near Baghdad, among the ruins of a Parthian settlement dating back to around 250 BC. Its discoverers initially catalogued it as curiosity, another pottery fragment among thousands recovered from the site. Only later did researchers notice its unusual internal configuration and begin to wonder whether its construction might have been more purposeful than random. When examined closely, the Baghdad battery reveals a sophisticated arrangement that could theoretically function as a galvanic cell. If filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, the combination of copper, iron, and electrolyte could generate a small electrical charge, enough to produce a mild tingling sensation, or perhaps even enough to power simple electroplating processes. This possibility has led to fascinating speculation about ancient technological capabilities. Could Parthian craftsmen have used such devices to plate jewelry with thin layers of precious metals? Experiments with replica batteries have shown that the design could indeed produce electrical currents sufficient for basic electroplating, a process that would have allowed ancient artisans to create objects that appeared to be solid gold or silver, while using only minimal amounts of precious metal. Yet no definitive evidence has been found of electroplated artifacts from the Parthian period, leaving the battery's actual function shrouded in mystery. Some researchers propose alternative explanations. Perhaps it was used to store sacred scrolls, with the copper and iron serving structural purposes unrelated to electrical generation. Others suggest it might have been employed in religious ceremonies, where the mild electrical sensation could have been interpreted as divine touch or spiritual energy. The absence of written records describing electrical phenomena in ancient Mesopotamia adds to the puzzle. If Parthian artisans possessed knowledge of electrical principles, why did this understanding leave no trace in their extensive written records? The Parthians were skilled chroniclers of their achievements in warfare, architecture, and trade, yet they seem to have left no description of electrical devices or their applications. More intriguing still is the possibility that the Baghdad battery represents not an isolated invention, but a surviving example of a broader technological tradition that has been lost to history. Could ancient civilizations have developed understanding of electrical phenomena through empirical experimentation, creating practical applications, without developing the theoretical framework we associate with electrical science? This question becomes more compelling when considered alongside other artifacts that seem to suggest ancient knowledge of principles we consider modern discoveries. From precision-engineered mechanical devices found in ancient shipwrecks to metallurgical techniques that produced alloys of remarkable sophistication, the archaeological record contains numerous examples of capabilities that challenge linear narratives of technological progress. The Baghdad battery forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the assumptions we make regarding ancient intellectual capacity. If people living over 2,000 years ago could discover and apply electrical principles, what other knowledge might they have possessed that we've overlooked or dismissed? How much of what we consider uniquely modern understanding might actually represent rediscovery of principles that were once more widely known? Standing before this modest clay jar in its museum display, you can't help but wonder about the hands that shaped it and the mind that conceived its internal arrangement. Was it crafted by a curious experimenter who noticed that certain metal combinations produce strange sensations? Did it represent the culmination of generations of accumulated knowledge about the hidden properties of materials? Or might it be something else entirely, an artifact whose true purpose remains as mysterious today as when it was first pulled from the Iraqi soil? The silence surrounding the Baghdad battery reflects a pattern we've seen throughout our exploration of ancient mysteries. Technologies that might have required sophisticated understanding to develop have left little trace in the historical record, as if the knowledge needed to create them vanished, along with the civilizations that produced them. Whether this reflects the fragility of technical knowledge, or simply the limitations of our current understanding, remains an open question. From the technological mysteries of ancient Mesopotamia, our journey takes us to the remote highlands of Western China, where another enigma challenges our assumptions about the capabilities of prehistoric peoples. In the desolate landscape surrounding Mount Baigong, where salt lakes reflect endless skies and few signs of life disturb the harsh terrain, lies evidence of what might be ancient engineering on a scale that defies conventional explanation. The discovery began with local legends that spoke of the mountain as a dwelling place for mysterious beings. Stories passed down through generations of herders and traders who crossed this inhospitable region. To most observers, Mount Baigong seemed an unlikely location for anything extraordinary. Just another peak rising from the barren highlands, where survival itself represented a constant struggle against the elements. But when Chinese researchers first investigated the site in the early 2000s, they found something that transformed local folklore into scientific mystery. Protruding from caves in the mountain's face were formations that looked remarkably like artificial pipes, rust-colored tubes that seemed too regular and purposeful to be natural geological features. The structures varied in size and condition, some embedded deep within solid rock, others scattered across the nearby lake bed as if they had once formed part of a larger system. Analysis revealed that many contained high concentrations of iron oxide mixed with silicon dioxide and calcium oxide, compositions consistent with corroded metal that had been exposed to the elements for extended periods. Most intriguingly, some of the formations contained organic plant material that had fossilized within their hollow centers, suggesting either that they had been deliberately filled with vegetation or that plants had grown inside them over time. The regularity of their diameters and their apparent connection between the mountain caves and the salt lake created the impression of a primitive but systematic infrastructure project. Mainstream geological explanation suggests these might be fossilized tree roots, ancient vegetation that was slowly replaced by minerals seeping through groundwater over thousands of years. This process, known as diagenesis, can create hollow tube-like structures that become encased in stone, potentially accounting for the pipe-like appearance of the Mount Baigong formations. Yet even this rational explanation struggles to account for all the observed features. The apparent organization of the structures, their consistent metallic composition, and their distribution patterns seem unusually systematic for random natural processes. The formations appear to connect the caves to the lake in ways that suggest purposeful design, rather than accidental geological development. The location itself adds another layer of mystery to the puzzle. Mount Baigong rises from one of the most remote and inhospitable regions of China, hundreds of miles from any known ancient settlements or trade routes. If these are natural formations, their concentration in this particular area seems remarkably coincidental. If they represent artificial construction, the question of who built them and why becomes even more perplexing. The harsh environment around Mount Baigong shows little evidence of ever having supported substantial human populations. Water is scarce, vegetation sparse, and the climate so severe that even modern travelers require extensive preparation and support to survive extended periods in the region. Yet the pipe formations suggest some kind of organized activity that would have required significant human effort and coordination. Speculative theories have emerged to explain the Mount Baigong mystery, ranging from ancient mining operations to prehistoric water management systems. Some researchers propose that the pipes might be remnants of an early civilization with sophisticated engineering capabilities. People who developed techniques for working with metals and organizing large construction projects long before such abilities were supposed to have existed. More exotic explanations venture into territory where archaeology meets science fiction, suggesting connections to extraterrestrial visitation or lost technologies that challenge our understanding of human technological development. While such theories lack supporting evidence beyond the formations themselves, They reflect the genuine puzzlement that the Mount Baigong pipes create for researchers trying to fit them into conventional categories. The site's remoteness and the restrictions placed on access by Chinese authorities have limited detailed investigation, leaving many questions unanswered. Satellite imagery clearly shows the formations, but ground-based research remains constrained by political sensitivities and environmental challenges that make comprehensive excavation and analysis difficult. What makes the Mount Baigong mystery particularly frustrating is how it exemplifies the challenges facing researchers who encounter anomalous archaeological evidence. The formations are clearly real and clearly unusual, yet they resist easy classification as either natural phenomena or artificial constructions. They exist in a category of their own, defying the neat boundaries that academic disciplines prefer to maintain. Standing in that harsh landscape, with wind sweeping across empty hills and the salt lake stretching toward distant mountains, you can understand why local people developed legends about otherworldly inhabitants. The isolation and strangeness of the place seem to invite speculation about possibilities that lie beyond the edges of conventional understanding. The pipes themselves remain silent, offering no clear indication of their origins or purpose. They might represent nothing more than an unusual geological formation, nature's capacity for creating structures that appear artificially designed, or they might be evidence of human capabilities and activities that have been lost to history, technological achievements that challenge our assumptions about the pace and pattern of human development. Either way, they serve as a reminder that remote corners of the world may still hold surprises that don't fit neatly into our current understanding of the past. The mystery of Mount Baigong persists, waiting in that desolate landscape for future investigators with better tools and broader perspectives to determine whether these formations represent forgotten human ingenuity or simply nature's talent for creating puzzles that look impossibly artificial. From China's remote highlands, we journey to the Arctic waste of northern Canada, where one of history's most disturbing disappearance mysteries continues to haunt investigators and amateur sleuths alike. In the vast emptiness of the Kivalik region, near the shores of Lake Anjikuni, lies the site of what may have been one of the most complete and inexplicable vanishing acts ever recorded. The story emerged in 1930 when Joe LaBelle, an experienced fur trapper familiar with the rhythms and dangers of northern wilderness life, arrived at what should have been a thriving Inuit settlement. LaBelle had visited the community before and expected to find the usual signs of winter activity: smoke rising from snow houses, children playing in the brief daylight, adults engaged in the countless tasks necessary for survival in one of Earth's most unforgiving environments. Instead, he found silence so complete it seemed to press against his eardrums like a physical weight. The village appeared to have been abandoned suddenly, with food still sitting over extinguished fires and essential winter supplies left where they had been placed. Most disturbing of all, sled dogs were found dead from starvation, still tethered to their posts, suggesting that whatever had happened to their owners had prevented even the basic act of releasing animals that were essential for survival. In Inuit culture, abandoning sled dogs would be virtually unthinkable under normal circumstances. These animals represented not just transportation, but the difference between life and death in the Arctic winter. Their care and feeding took priority over almost every other consideration, making their abandonment a sign that something extraordinary and terrible had occurred. LaBelle's discovery becomes even more disturbing when you consider what was missing from the scene. There were no tracks leading away from the settlement, no signs of hurried packing or evacuation, no indication that the villagers had chosen to leave or been forced to flee. Personal belongings remained where they had been left, including items that would be essential for survival in the Arctic winter. The absence of any clear trail posed perhaps the greatest puzzle of all. In the snow-covered landscape of the Arctic, human movement leaves obvious traces that can be followed for days or even weeks after the fact. Yet searchers found no footprints, no sled tracks, no indication of which direction the missing people might have gone. or how they might have traveled. When news of Labelle's discovery reached authorities, search parties were dispatched to investigate the reported disappearance. According to the accounts that followed, these official investigations confirmed the trappers' basic observations. An entire Inuit community had vanished without leaving any clear evidence of where they had gone or what had happened to them. The mystery of Anjikuni has generated numerous theories over the decades, though none fully explains the circumstances as they were reported. Some researchers suggest that harsh environmental conditions or sudden climate changes might have forced a rapid evacuation, though this fails to explain the absence of tracks or the abandonment of essential survival equipment. Others propose that the community might have been forced to flee by hostile human groups, though no evidence of violence was found at the site, and such conflicts were rare in the sparsely populated Arctic regions. The completeness of the disappearance, with no survivors to tell the story, makes any explanation involving external threats seem implausible. More speculative theories have ventured into territory where documented history meets unexplained phenomena. Some have suggested mass abduction by forces unknown, while others point to strange lights and unusual atmospheric phenomena reported in Arctic regions as possible connections to the disappearance. The reliability of the Anjikuni story itself has come under scrutiny from modern researchers, who note that contemporary documentation is sparse and that many details come from secondary sources that may have embellished the original accounts. Some suggest that what actually occurred might have been a more mundane tragedy that became mythologized over time into something more mysterious and complete. Yet even allowing for possible exaggeration in the telling, the basic elements of the story remain deeply unsettling. The idea of an entire community vanishing without trace touches on fundamental fears about human vulnerability and the limits of our understanding about what can happen in the world's most isolated places. The Arctic landscape, where the Anjikuni settlement once stood, remains largely unchanged from Labelle's time, its frozen expanses hiding whatever evidence might still exist beneath layers of snow and ice. The silence that he encountered that winter day continues to echo across the tundra, carrying questions about human fragility and the mysteries that can unfold in places where civilization's reach remains tenuous. Today, the Anjikuni mystery serves as a reminder that even in our connected modern world, there are still places remote enough and harsh enough that entire communities could potentially disappear, leaving behind only questions and the endless whisper of Arctic wind across empty land. Whether the disappearance occurred exactly as early reports suggested, or whether it represents a more complex series of events that became simplified and dramatized in the telling, it highlights the Prek environments. The story resonates because area's nature of human existence in Earth's most challenging. It captures something essential about the human condition. Our vulnerability to forces beyond our control, and our deep need to understand what happens to those who simply vanish from the world. In the case of Anjikuni, that understanding may remain forever beyond our reach, locked away in the same Arctic silence that swallowed whatever evidence might once have explained the fate of an entire community. From the frozen mysteries of the Canadian Arctic, our exploration takes us to the lush rainforests of Costa Rica, where hundreds of perfectly spherical stone objects scattered across the landscape present another category of ancient enigma. These artifacts challenge our understanding not just of prehistoric capabilities, but of the purposes and motivations that drove ancient peoples to invest enormous effort in creating objects whose function remains completely mysterious. The stone spheres of Costa Rica range from small orbs the size of basketballs to massive monuments weighing 15 tons and measuring over 6 feet in diameter. What makes them extraordinary is not just their size, but their precision. These spheres are carved with mathematical accuracy that deviates only millimeters from perfect geometric forms, representing a level of craftsmanship that would challenge even modern sculptors working with power tools. The spheres were created by the Diki culture, a pre-Columbian society that flourished in southern Costa Rica between 700 and 1500 AD. Yet despite their obvious importance to the people who made them, No clear record exists of their purpose, their creation methods, or their cultural significance. They stand as silent testimony to human ambitions and capabilities we can appreciate but not fully comprehend. Archaeological evidence suggests that many spheres were positioned in specific arrangements that might have held astronomical, ceremonial, or territorial significance. Some formed geometric patterns, others were aligned with celestial events, and still others appeared to mark important locations or boundaries. Yet without written records or surviving cultural traditions, their intended meanings remain locked away with the civilization that created them. The technical achievement represented by these spheres becomes more remarkable when you consider the tools and techniques available to their creators. The Diki people worked with stone hammers, wooden wedges, and abrasive materials to shape some of Earth's hardest rock into perfect spherical forms. The process would have required not just physical strength and endurance, but sophisticated understanding of geometry, materials science, and systematic methodology. Creating a perfect sphere from rough stone is among the most challenging tasks in sculpture, requiring constant measurement and adjustment to maintain symmetry in 3 dimensions. Modern attempts to replicate the process using primitive tools have proven extremely difficult, suggesting that the ancient craftsmen possessed techniques and knowledge that we haven't fully reconstructed. The sphere's original contexts have been largely lost due to their removal and displacement over the past century. When they were first rediscovered by banana plantation workers in the 1930s, many were moved to serve as garden decorations, town square monuments, or private collections. This scattering has made it impossible to study their original arrangements and relationships, adding another layer of mystery to their purpose and significance. Some spheres were dynamited by treasure hunters who believed they might contain gold or precious objects, destroying irreplaceable artifacts in pursuit of imaginary riches. Others were damaged by exposure to weather and human activity after being removed from their protected original locations. Only in recent decades have serious efforts begun to preserve and study the remaining spheres in their archaeological contexts. The mystery of Costa Rica's stone spheres extends beyond their individual perfection to encompass questions about the society that created them. The Diki culture appears to have been remarkably sophisticated, with evidence of complex social hierarchies, long-distance trade networks, and specialized craft production. Yet they left no written records, no monumental architecture, and few other traces beyond these enigmatic spheres. This absence of other major archaeological remains makes the spheres even more puzzling. Why would a culture invest such enormous effort in creating these perfect stone orbs, while leaving so little other evidence of their achievements? Were the spheres themselves the primary expression of Diki artistic and technical capabilities? Or do they represent just one aspect of a more complex civilization whose other accomplishments have not survived? Modern research has revealed that the spheres were carved from several different types of stone, including granodorite, limestone, and sandstone, materials that would have required different techniques and tools for shaping. This diversity suggests that the sphere-making tradition was adaptable and long-lasting, with craftsmen learning to work with whatever materials were locally available. The sphere's distribution across Costa Rica's landscape also raises intriguing questions about their creators' territorial range and social organization. They appear at sites separated by considerable distances, suggesting either a unified culture with extensive reach, or a shared tradition that spread through trade, migration, or cultural exchange between different groups. Some researchers have proposed that the spheres served as status symbols, with larger and more perfect examples, marking the homes or territories of important leaders. Others suggest they might have functioned as astronomical calculators, their positions and alignments, encoding information about celestial cycles, important for agriculture or religious observances. The most speculative theories venture into territory where archaeology meets mythology, suggesting connections to lost civilizations, ancient wisdom traditions, or even extraterrestrial influences. While such ideas lack supporting evidence, They reflect the genuine puzzlement that these artifacts create for anyone trying to understand their purpose and significance. Today, the stone spheres of Costa Rica are protected as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, recognized for their unique contribution to human cultural heritage. Yet their protection comes centuries too late to preserve the context and arrangements that might have revealed their meanings. They stand in museums and archaeological parks as beautiful but mute testimony to human capabilities we can admire but not fully comprehend. Walking among these perfect stone orbs, feeling their smooth surfaces, and marveling at their precise geometry, you can't help but wonder about the minds that conceived them and the hands that shaped them. What drove ancient craftsmen to invest such enormous effort in creating objects of pure geometric perfection? What knowledge, beliefs, or purposes motivated their creation? And what might we learn about human nature and capability if we could decode the messages these silent spheres continue to carry across the centuries? The mystery of Costa Rica's stone spheres serves as a powerful reminder that human creativity and ambition have always exceeded the boundaries of purely practical necessity. They represent the eternal human drive to create beauty, meaning, and permanence in a world of constant change, even when the specific purposes and meanings become lost to time. These perfect spheres continue to challenge our assumptions about ancient capabilities and motivations, standing as monuments to human potential that transcends the supposed limitations of any historical period. In their silent perfection, they whisper questions about what else we might have forgotten, what other achievements might be waiting to be rediscovered, and how much of our shared human story remains hidden in the spaces between documented history and archaeological evidence. The spheres of Costa Rica remind us that mystery itself can be a form of communication, that some messages from the past might be too profound or complex for immediate understanding. They invite us to keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep marveling at the endless capacity of human beings to create wonders that outlast the civilizations that produce them, carrying their secrets forward through time, like perfectly crafted enigmas waiting for future generations to decode. As night deepens and shadows lengthen across the landscapes we've explored, our journey through the world's most perplexing mysteries draws toward its close. Yet in these final moments, we encounter perhaps the most unsettling category of all. Those enigmas that seem to exist at the very edges of human understanding, where the boundaries between the known and unknowable blur into something that defies every attempt at rational explanation. Deep in the archives of medieval monasteries, scattered across remote archaeological sites, and hidden in the collections of bewildered researchers, lie artifacts and phenomena that suggest our ancestors may have encountered forces or knowledge systems that remain completely beyond our current comprehension. These are not mysteries of engineering or construction, not puzzles of vanished civilizations or lost technologies, but evidence of something far stranger, moments when the normal rules of reality itself seem to have been suspended. In the Hungarian countryside, within the walls of ancient monasteries, scribes once labored over texts that modern scholars cannot begin to decipher. The symbols flow across parchment in patterns that suggest meaning, yet resist every attempt at translation. Computer analysis reveals statistical structures consistent with genuine language, yet the meaning remains locked away behind barriers that seem almost deliberately impenetrable. These manuscripts contain illustrations that blend familiar religious imagery with elements that seem to come from entirely different conceptual frameworks. Figures engage in activities that don't match any known historical practices, while geometric patterns suggest mathematical relationships that follow unfamiliar principles. The books themselves seem to pulse with significance, yet that significance remains as distant today as when they were first discovered centuries ago. What makes these texts particularly haunting is their obvious sophistication. These are not the random scribblings of isolated mystics or the crude attempts of forgers seeking to deceive. They represent systematic efforts to record complex information using symbolic systems whose underlying logic we simply cannot penetrate. The consistency and internal coherence of the writing suggests minds every bit as organized and purposeful as our own, yet operating according to principles we have yet to recognize. The silence that surrounds these ancient mysteries speaks louder than any answer we might uncover. From sealed tombs that guard their secrets with deadly traps, to entire civilizations that vanished without explanation, from impossible constructions that challenge modern engineering to artifacts that suggest knowledge we've forgotten how to understand. These enigmas remind us that human history is far stranger and more complex than we dare imagine. They whisper of capabilities lost to time, of achievements that transcend the supposed limitations of their eras, and of questions that may never find their answers. Yet perhaps that's exactly as it should be. For in a world where satellites map every inch of Earth's surface and algorithms decode the deepest mysteries, these ancient riddles preserve something essential. The humbling reminder that some secrets are meant to endure, waiting patiently in the shadows for those brave enough to keep searching.